So that brings us to the last bit, which is a special topic that, again, I feel like I'm prefacing everything with, I don't have enough time to give this topic the in-depth review that it deserves, but I wanted to make space to talk about the intersections of gender diverse identities and LGBTQ plus identities and neurodiverse and autistic communities. So I wanted to give a special thanks here to Bridget, who I talked to at the beginning about their book, along with their co-author, Noah Adams. The first QR code there is a link to their book, Trans and Autistic, Stories from Life at the Intersection. That's first-person accounts from a variety of trans and autistic people, talking about what was hard, what was easy, what people can do to support. Another, Supporting Transgender and Autistic Youth and Adults, by Finn Grafton, as an excellent book for families and service providers to get to understand how we can better support the transgender, autistic youth and adults that we are going to support. And portions of this section were informed by a previous presentation I developed with Katrina McGee, who's currently with SD61 and Beanstalk Behavior Consulting, and Kingsley Strudwick, who founded Ambit Gender Diversity Consulting in Victoria. And that QR code links to Ambit's website. They do a variety of trainings for organizations and have some good family support groups for people who have somebody who is gender diverse or want to learn about how you can better support gender diverse folks in your life. So the intersections of neurodiversity and identity diversity, we know from research that there's an increasing recognition that there is a significant overlap between being on the autism spectrum and being gender diverse. Research sort of varies and different research has different methods, but somewhere between 6 and 27% of autistic people also identify as gender diverse. And research also finds that autistic traits among people with gender dysphoria occur at a rate of about 5 to 20%. So there's a range there, but we see that beyond a population that isn't autistic or doesn't have autistic traits, it is higher than we might expect in just like the general population that includes everyone. And also increasing recognition with some research that the overlap between autism and sexual identities is about 50 to 70% of autistic individuals are also going to be somewhere on the LGBTQIA+ spectrum. And so I think we need to recognize these overlapping identities and give them special consideration. So if you are a service provider listening to the presentation, you are serving these folks, right? Whether you know it or not, or whether they even know it themselves or not right now. And if you're a family member, you might be raising or caring for one of these people. And so I think it's really important that we spend some time talking about this intersection. One thing that's really important to know is that trans and gender diverse youth are at an increased risk of mental health challenges that range from suicidality to self-harm and symptoms of depression. Youth, and we can assume probably beyond youth, although there's a lot of research particularly centered on youth, with additional intersectional identities may have elevated risk. So these are the folks that are both autistic and gender diverse. We know that autistic people are more likely to experience some adverse mental health challenges, and same with people that are gender diverse. So when those things overlap, we could see an elevated risk. So I don't have a lot of time to describe, although I will point out a few support strategies. I think the biggest thing for people to take away, that I want for people to take away, is that we should support and then move towards understanding. We do not have to understand in order to support. Supporting somebody who is gender diverse or LGBTQ is important and can have a serious impact on the likelihood of a positive outcome for that person. This is just a really, it's a simple graph that basically what it says is that, and this is from TransPulse 2012, which was a study completed in Canada, that when people have parents who are very supportive of their gender identity, they're significantly more likely to satisfied and have very good or excellent mental health, higher self-esteem, and adequate housing. So the ones that are marked with a star at the bottom. And contrast that to parents who are somewhat or not at all supportive. That has a major impact on the ability of trans youth to have adequate housing, high self-esteem, excellent mental health, satisfied with life. And so the thing to point out here is that parents that are somewhat supportive have the same outcomes as parents who are not at all supportive. So it's very important for parents to find ways and support for themselves so that they can be very supportive to their youth who may be identifying as trans or gender diverse, because the outcomes for the child are dependent on parents being very supportive. I want to take some time and make space to recognize ABA, or applied behavior analysis, harmful history when it comes to the intersections of LGBTQ identities and the history of ABA. I think in order to move forward, we must recognize the harmful and lasting impact of historical and current practices in the field of ABA on LGBT+ communities. So we have to recognize and call out harm when it's caused and not move away from it. We've seen this in other fields, in mental health and medicine, that have addressed harms in the past in order to move forward, and I want to be part of moving this conversation forward so that people can see the benefits of applied behavior analysis and not focus on the harms. So as part of this, in 1974, Riekers and Lovaas published an article entitled Behavior Treatment of Deviant Sex Role Behavior in a Male Child. And they used ABA procedures to extinguish gender nonconforming behaviors in a 4-year-old boy. This article was published in the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis, which is a journal that most people in applied behavior analysis still access as sort of like one of the key journals that helps to inform practices of people who work in the field of ABA. The procedures used in this study range from withholding attention. So for instance, the parents were directed to ignore the child when they engaged in any feminine behaviors or any feminine play was occurring. And so these were sort of like, playing with dolls, dress up, those sorts of things. They also included punishment procedures, so use of a timeout, being sent to a room at home, social isolation, and removal of privileges, but also included the use of physical abuse, which was spankings that elevated into what his family members have described subsequently as more as a beating than a spanking, delivered by the parent. But that was suggested by these researchers. So this resulted in lifelong irreparable harm to the boy who participated in this study against his consent. His parents identified that this was something they wanted to change, but the boy wasn't asked or given a say, and he committed suicide at the age of 38. Riekers has a subsequent extensive history of anti-LGBTQIA work. And the link between conversion therapy of this kind, trying to change somebody's behavior from gender nonconforming to conforming within expected societal expectations, and the use of, there is a link between that and the use of principles of ABA. And people link those things together, particularly given that Ivar Lovaas was one of the people involved in the Young Autism Project that sort of started the pathway towards autism being treated with applied behavior analysis, or people with autism participating in applied behavior analytic services. And so this QR code goes to a website that I want to encourage people to explore, and I will read the work of Denisha Jingles through retracthate.com. We must show up for our LGBTQ and Two-Spirit Plus colleagues and clients in a real way. This includes taking a look at our literature and retracting harmful articles, the existence of hateful and harmful research in studies such as Riekers and Lovaas and Riekers 77 contributes to the erosion of trust that our field of ABA is experiencing. A retraction is a meaningful and necessary step to note that this is not scientific knowledge that practitioners should rely on or which researchers should replicate or attempt to extend. Retraction also admits the journal's historical complicity and dissemination of such research, which was used to support conversion therapy practices for decades. So I encourage people to go to retracthate.com to learn more about this movement by people within the field of applied behavior analysis, led by behavior analysts, to have this article retracted so that people don't point to it as something that should be used and extended to promote conversion therapy of any kind. And so you can sign on to Retract Hate and End Conversion Therapy here. And just wanting to thank the people at Beautiful Humans Change, which is a social justice and behavior analysis podcast, and the work of people at Upswing Advocates who do work focusing on transgender, supporting transgender people through their work. They're located in the United States. So, to borrow from Maya Angelou, when we know better, we can do better. And so there are a number of things that we can do to help to ensure that we're not contributing to erasure of identities and that we are keeping those we care for really safe. And I want to just thank the people that are working in that Retract Hate group for the campaign for many of these ideas that follow. I've talked about some of these ideas myself, and they have put them together in a way that's more beautifully presented than I could have done. So through that website, there's some really great infographics that people can access to think about what are we doing as practices, as parents or professionals, in order to make sure that we're doing better because now we know better. And so one of the things that we can think about doing is, are we providing open choices and not limiting choices based on gender or based on assumed gender? So if we're presenting toys to a child, whether that's in your home or whether that's when you're a service provider, are you putting all of the toys together, right? So you're getting out the dolls and the tea set and the robots and the Lego and the unicorn stuffies and the racetrack, all of the things pictured there, and not taking out the tea set and the dolls and the stuffy unicorns because you assume your client or your child is a girl, but you're also providing them with opportunities to play with robots and Legos and car tracks. So making sure that we're providing open choices and not providing choices based on an assumed gender. So also, don't teach pronouns based on what someone looks like. So classically, we might have seen this be like the pictures on one side, which are like, oh, who are these people? Well, it's a boy because, you know, he has short hair. It's a girl because she's wearing a dress and has pigtails. It's a boy because he's wearing blue. It's a girl because she's wearing pink. So these are some things that are like, don't actually tell us anything about somebody's gender. So we could refer to all of those people as they. So like they have their arms up. They're wearing a cute blue dress. They're wearing glasses. They have cute pigtails. I understand the utility of teaching pronouns as like a language development, but there's lots and lots and lots of materials that we could use that have people that we already know their gender identities are well established. Cinderella, pretty well established that Cinderella is a girl. She's a woman. She's wearing a dress. So we can teach the pronoun she. So who's wearing a dress? She's wearing a dress. We know it's she because Cinderella has a long history of being a girl. Superman, same. Long history of being identified as a man. More and more, we're getting some like pop culture and like that the kids will recognize of people who identify as non-binary. And so using those kinds of pictures to teach people pronouns. So we've got Sam Smith. So you can teach people about Sam and say like they are wearing a red shirt. And more recently, Demi Lovato, also coming out as non-binary. So saying like, Demi Lovato looks so great. They cut their hair really short, love their earrings, want to see more of the couch that they're sitting on. So we can teach with some of these things that are people whose pronouns we know, as opposed to arbitrary gender markers. For service providers, I also think that like this is important to create an inclusive, equitable workplace for employees, clients, families, and carers. So some things that you can think about if you're a service provider are putting pronouns in your email signature. And so that means that everybody puts their pronouns in their email signature so people know what pronouns to use, and also so that somebody that is changing their pronouns or uses pronouns that are different than what somebody might be misgendering them as are sort of clear, but it's not expected of just people who maybe be gender diverse. Do you have inclusive bathroom signage? The WC, the water closet, right? Or toilet, and we're not separating people based on their gender for bathrooms, or we're allowing people to use the bathroom that matches their gender identity and not their gender assigned at birth. And are we creating inclusive forms, intake forms, where we're allowing people to write in their own pronouns, both for staff, for parents, for like other professionals that might be involved? And does your workspace have some signage that shows that you're like an open, inclusive, safe space for all people? So more ideas and the self-check infographic about some of those ideas can be found at that retracthate.com. And this is a QR code that takes you immediately to that infographic, where you can also sign on to the retraction as well. And then for service providers, this is where I really got into the QR codes, is this comprehensive self-assessment by Warner Leland and August Stockwell that was published in 2019 in Behavior Analysis and Practice, which is just a really simple assessment tool to see whether you as an organization are cultivating affirming practices. And so you can get a link to the Springer publication via this QR code if you have access. If not, the authors, I'm sure, would be happy to send you a copy if you get in touch. If you're looking for some signage for your space to show that you're an inclusive service provider and that you welcome everyone, purchase maybe something like this welcoming inclusive space poster. This is from a queer-owned tattoo shop where I live and work in Victoria. And this QR code takes you to a digital download of this poster that you can purchase. And you can put up in a wall, and it just says, "You are so loved. We welcome all bodies, all abilities, all genders, all religions, all countries of origin, all sexual orientations, all races and ethnicities, everyone. We stand here with you, and you are safe here." So something like that can really help a family who has a child who's gender diverse, or has a parent or a loved one who's gender diverse, know that you're safe and it doesn't harm anybody who doesn't have one of those personal experiences, but it can really help somebody who does.